More than 3,000 years ago, someone entered the sacred monuments of Egypt with a deliberate purpose. They did not come to steal gold. They came to destroy a name. Across temples and statues, workers raised their tools against the image of a dead pharaoh. Faces were hammered away. Royal names were cut from stone. Statues were dragged down, broken into pieces and buried in pits. This was not random vandalism. It was organized, selective, and ordered by someone with immense authority. The person they were trying to erase was Hatshepsut. She had ruled Egypt for nearly 20 years. Under her government, trade routes reopened. Temples rose across the kingdom and enormous obelisks were lifted toward the sun. She had worn the crown, commanded the state, and presented herself as a legitimate king. But Hatshepsut was a woman in an office Egyptians traditionally imagined as male. Decades after her death, her image began disappearing from public view. Her name was omitted from later lists of kings. For centuries, the story of one of Egypt's most successful rulers was almost lost. The obvious explanation seems simple. A man whose throne she had occupied finally took revenge. But the evidence refuses to make the story that easy. The destruction began long after Hatshepsut was gone. Some of her images were attacked, while others were carefully left untouched. And the man most often blamed had once ruled beside her. So, who tried to erase Hatshepsut? And what were they truly afraid of? To answer that question, we must return to a moment when Egypt had a child king and a woman standing behind the throne. Hatshepsut was born into Egypt's 18th dynasty during the opening age of the New Kingdom. She was the daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I and Queen Ahmose. From childhood, she lived inside a world in which royal blood, religion, and political authority were inseparable. She later married her half-brother, Thutmose II, and became his principal queen. Their marriage produced a daughter, Neferur, but no surviving son who could inherit the throne. When Thutmose II died, the crown passed to a young boy from another royal wife, Thutmose III. The new king was too young to govern. Hatshepsut therefore became regent, the adult who would exercise power in his name until he was old enough to rule. This arrangement was not extraordinary. Royal women had protected young kings before. At first, Hatshepsut appeared to follow that familiar pattern, but she possessed something few regents could claim. She was the daughter of a king, the wife of a king, and the most experienced royal figure at court. She understood the palace, the temples, and the officials whose loyalty held the kingdom together. Her authority grew. In monuments from these early years, she appears as a queen performing increasingly important religious and political duties. Then, sometime within the first 7 years of the young Thutmose's reign, the transformation became unmistakable. Hatshepsut adopted the full titles of an Egyptian king. She did not remove Thutmose III. His name continued to appear beside hers, and the two were officially co-rulers. But Hatshepsut became the senior figure, the person who controlled the machinery of government. Egypt now had 2 kings, and the more powerful of them was a woman. Hatshepsut did not simply call herself queen. She became Pharaoh. She adopted the throne name Mortuary, placed her names inside royal cartouches, and assumed the ceremonial responsibilities associated with kingship. But Egyptian kingship was more than a government position. The pharaoh stood at the center of a sacred order. He was expected to maintain Ma'at, the balance that kept the kingdom, the gods, and the universe in harmony. The language and imagery of that office had been shaped around a male ruler. Hatshepsut therefore faced a unique challenge. She had to make her authority appear not revolutionary, but legitimate. Her monuments show how carefully this was done. Some statues portray her clearly as a woman wearing royal insignia. Others give her the idealized body of a male king, complete with the striped royal headcloth and ceremonial false beard. This was not an attempt to deceive Egyptians into believing she was physically male. Her identity was known. The imagery communicated something more important. She occupied the timeless office of Pharaoh. Her temple inscriptions also connected her rule to divine will. At Deir el-Bahri, scenes presented the god Amun as the divine source of her birth and authority. Her claim was strengthened through religion, royal ancestry, and public ritual. Power also depended on people. Officials such as Senenmut, an influential administrator connected to Hatshepsut's great building program and the education of her daughter, helped turn royal ambition into stone. Meanwhile, Thutmose III did not vanish. He matured, received military training, and remained king beside her. That detail matters. Hatshepsut did not rule because Egypt had forgotten its young king. She ruled openly, through a system that acknowledged them both. And for nearly 2 decades, that system held. Hatshepsut understood that a pharaoh could not survive on titles alone. Her rule needed visible proof. She launched an ambitious program of construction and restoration. At Karnak, giant obelisks of red granite were raised in honor of Amun. Their polished tips would once have caught the sunlight, turning royal devotion into a spectacle visible across the sacred complex. Her greatest monument rose against the cliffs at Deir el-Bahri. Terrace above terrace, column after column, the temple seemed to grow directly from the desert mountain. Its walls did more than honor the gods and prepare for the ruler's afterlife. They told Hatshepsut's version of history. Among the most remarkable scenes was a trading expedition to Punt, a land located somewhere in the region of the southern Red Sea. Egyptian ships returned carrying valuable materials, including incense resins, ebony, ivory, and living myrrh trees. The reliefs presented the journey as evidence of order restored, distant lands reached, and wealth flowing into Egypt. Hatshepsut's reign is often remembered as peaceful, but it was not a world without force. Egyptian authority still depended on soldiers, borders, and the ability to suppress resistance. What distinguished her public image was the emphasis placed on prosperity, sacred construction, and successful exchange. Every temple, inscription, and obelisk carried the same message. The gods approved of Hatshepsut. Egypt prospered under Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut was king. Then, around the 22nd year counted from Thutmose III's accession, her reign ended. There is no reliable evidence that she was murdered or violently overthrown. The most likely explanation is simpler. Hatshepsut died, and Thutmose III became Egypt's sole ruler. Her monuments remained standing. Her images remained visible. Her name remained carved into stone. For approximately 20 more years, no great campaign was launched against her memory. And then, the destruction began. Workers moved through Hatshepsut's monuments with chisels and hammers. Her royal names were cut away. Images showing her as king were defaced or replaced. Statues from her temple were shattered and thrown into pits, where their fragments would remain for thousands of years. The campaign is most commonly connected to Thutmose III. For generations, historians told the story as an act of personal revenge. The young king had been pushed aside by his stepmother, waited for her death, and finally destroyed the woman who had stolen his throne. It is dramatic. But there is no clear evidence that Thutmose hated Hatshepsut, and the timing creates a serious problem. Why would an angry ruler wait approximately 20 years before taking revenge? The destruction was also selective. Many public representations of Hatshepsut as king were attacked, while some images and inscriptions in less visible places survived. Her existence was obscured, but not every trace of the woman was eliminated. This has led scholars toward political explanations. Thutmose may have wanted the official royal succession to appear as a clean male line, from his father directly to himself. Late in his reign, the future of his own dynasty mattered. Removing Hatshepsut from the sequence could strengthen the legitimacy of the next male heir, Amenhotep II. It is also possible that more than one ruler or group of officials contributed to the campaign. What can be said with confidence is limited but powerful. The damage was deliberate. It targeted Hatshepsut's public identity as pharaoh, and it began long after any immediate struggle for the throne had ended. Whoever ordered it was not merely breaking statues. They were editing the political memory of Egypt, deciding which ruler future generations would be permitted to remember. For a time, the plan succeeded. But stone is difficult to silence completely. Centuries passed. Hatshepsut disappeared from later royal histories, while monuments created during her reign were misunderstood or credited to others. But the erasure was never complete. Hidden inscriptions survived. Broken statues waited beneath the earth. Her temple continued to stand against the cliffs of western Thebes. In the 19th century, scholars began confronting a puzzle. Inscriptions used feminine language for a ruler who appeared in the traditional form of a male king. The fragments did not fit the history they thought they knew. During excavations at Deir el-Bahri in the 20th century, archaeologists uncovered pits containing thousands of pieces from Hatshepsut's destroyed statues. Hands, crowns, faces, and bodies were patiently identified and reassembled. The woman once attacked with hammers was restored, fragment by fragment. Today, Hatshepsut is recognized as one of ancient Egypt's most consequential rulers. Her temple remains one of the defining monuments of the Nile Valley. One of her great obelisks still rises at Karnak. Her statues stand in museums, carrying the name her destroyers tried to remove. We may never know the precise motive behind the campaign against her. Perhaps it protected a royal succession. Perhaps it restored a traditional version of kingship. Perhaps several motives converged at the end of Thutmose III's reign. The uncertainty is not a weakness in the story. It is the truth the surviving evidence allows us to tell. Hatshepsut's fate also reveals something larger. History is not only shaped by those who build monuments. It is shaped by those who decide whose names remain upon them. Her enemies possessed chisels, authority, and centuries of silence, yet they failed. Because a name carved deeply enough into history may be damaged. It may be buried. It may even be forgotten for a time, but it cannot always be erased.